So welcome everybody. So today we are having our May meetup, not April, May meetup for Agile Malaysia. And today we have three special guests today. Sally, Josh, and Michael, who are three very experienced Agile coaches. And we're going to be talking about Agile careers. So let me introduce our guest today. So we have Sally from Australia. Sally hails from Australia, so she's an Agile coach, obviously, and has a lot of experience working with teams in Australia, going to conferences, learning lots of different things, and meeting lots of people. So Sally has a lot of experience over 20 years, and she's here to share her experience with all of you. Next we have Joshua. Joshua hails from Singapore. So 17 years of IT development, lots of different industries, from healthcare, retail, telecoms, even government. So right now, Joshua is at Hales Digital as an Agile coach and Scrum Master. So Joshua hails from Singapore. And then lastly, we have Michael Cheek, or I can refer to as Mikey. So Mikey has almost 20 years experience in this field. He hails from Hong Kong, and I guess uniquely, he works for a consulting company, which you can read there in the bio. So three of our coaches here have come from three very different backgrounds, three very different perspectives. And I hope that they can share their experience with all of you through moderated discussion, and we'll end it off with a Q&A at the end of it. Myself, I'm Z. So I'm an Agile coach trainer based in Malaysia, and I'll be moderating this discussion. All right.
Thanks, Z.
So
thank you.
We will be using Slido for Q&A. So if you could use your browser, you could use your mobile device. Go to slido.com, that's www.sli.do, put in the code AgileMY0520 for this event, and you'll be able to ask questions. I'll also be doing a couple of polls here through Slido, so if you want to interact with the polls, please open up Slido on your mobile device or your browser. So firstly, just want to understand kind of the audience that we have today. So if you could go to Slido and kind of put in what role that you currently are playing, right? So you may not have the exact title, but kind of what is the profession that most closely you identify with. So I myself, even though I've been Agile coaching for a while, I definitely did not start as an Agile coach because this career, has only emerged in the last 10, 15 years or so. So I want to, while we're taking the poll, I want to open up to our panelists today on how do you enter this profession as an Agile coach?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Sally, how about we start with you?
So interestingly enough for me, I started my career at Microsoft. I stumbled my way into a web tester position when I didn't have the foggiest idea how to deal with websites. I hadn't even built my first one yet, and I was testing them. And I kind of stumbled into Agile several years later. So I was kind of a website master, web producer, developer, tester sort of gal for about 15 years before I stumbled into Agile. So a lot of web work, a lot of crazy business stuff at Microsoft.
All right. What about Michael?
Web related as well. That was around 1996, a long time ago. I was very, very young back then.
Wasn't a long time ago.
I was a web developer, and the projects I worked for, they always had really, really crappy project managers, and I got very upset with them. And one day I told them, your job is so easy, I could do it in my sleep. And then the other side was very, very upset and said, okay, why don't you just freaking do it? And I did it. And because I was doing a little bit of agile development before, I also went towards agile project management, which later became Scrum Mastering. But I realized I really liked that much better, much more than being a developer. And that's how I became first a Scrum Master and then an agile coach.
Right. And Joshua? Oops, let me unmute you, Joshua. Joshua, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So when I actually reflect back, quite a number of things that happened in my life. My IT career is not very smooth, to be precise. I started off with an analyst programmer at the time. Then slowly I was aspired to be a PM. So most of the time when I slowly move on, especially when I go into the government career, I realized that, hey, you have to be really tough to get things done. And you really have to really literally strangle all the developers or the contractor just to deliver the projects. So I because I'm and really want to get things done. So I have a lot of bad tension at the time, and especially running a very mission critical projects with the government. Yeah, so I was to a point that I felt very lost. I said, hey, this is not the way to do IT projects. You know, people are not happy, to a point that I felt that, hey, it's time to go. Even though I think I like project management, I think it's for me, but I just felt that something is very wrong, the traditional way. So I actually quit IT industry for a short, brief time for half a year. I just started off and do some business in the food industry. I burned my hands. I lose money, yes. Then so no choice, but I have to actually look for a job again. But no, then I managed to find IT job, project management job again. That's the only thing I can do. So after that, looking around, then there was still very grumpy and late, and doesn't really not very happy what I'm doing. So point suddenly something really struck me. Agile project manager, what's that? You know, that was a time where about 6-7 years ago. Then I get to stumble upon it. Then that makes me thinking. Then I just applied job and got it. So of course, when I was in the interview, I faked my way out. I did whatever I can just to get that position. Then I was so lucky that I can work with TopWorks, and I happened to see that how Agile really works, and that's so fascinating. And after 1 year of this Agile PM, I just quit and say, oh, okay, Agile is the way to go. So I start doing all the Agile trainings and get myself all staffed up with all the knowledge. But yeah, then at the same time, I also do some pro bono and then give free workshop to even other countries, to Myanmar, to people who don't know what is actually Agile, and then even actually start doing pro bono for my friends. So slowly I actually crawl my way into the Agile coaching, and I was recruited by NCS. Then from there, I really started off my Agile coaching.
Great, thank you, Joshua. So I just want to call ourselves to a poll. So we have 21 respondents. So it looks like half of the respondents, 40%, are actually Agile coaches, right? So I think we can take this discussion up a notch, right? The rest are Scrum Master, project managers. We probably have a couple of designer and a business analyst in there. Okay, so first question. Let's define Agile coaching, right? So the question I'm going to pose to the panelists is, what is Agile coaching, and how would you explain this to a kid? All right, so who would like to take this?
You guys shy away. I do. Funny story. My 18-year-old recently got certified as a Scrum Master, and my 14-year-old has just completed the course and is about to get certified this weekend. For my husband and I are both Agile coaches, and so for us, this is kind of bringing common sense and humanity back to business. It's something that we saw a very big lack of in the old days in Microsoft. And for us, it's part of who we are. It's part of our DNA. It's part of what we do every day. I can't even tell you how many Kanban boards we have around our house for different projects. The way I describe this to people who know absolutely zero is it's a way to bring back business to thinking about how not to be wasteful, how to take care of your customer, and how to take care of your people. Because when you do those things, everything else can eventually be dealt with. Everything else is going to naturally get better. But you've got to go back to those very, very basics. And I think that's something that got lost in the money making, got to get bigger, got to get better, got to get faster. It's just about bringing that common sense back in. And I find that kids get it more than the adults do. It's interesting.
All right. What about Joshua and Mikey?
Okay, maybe I will try. If I'm going to explain, I will tell them that it's just like helping to make them work like as if they're playing games. Yep. So it's always you're always talking about, you know, when you're hooked up in the games, right, you're always talking about playing again and again and get yourself better and better. And every game that, right, you're supposed to accomplish something. So I felt that to a certain extent, Agile is like right, to make work gamify, you know, gamifying work, I feel. So every time I'm so facilitated into actually setting goals with my developers, and then, hey, we will try to actually strive that, you know, let's celebrate success every time we finish iteration.
Nice.
So that keeps the morale very high. Yeah.
Well,
so this is how we do it. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess it's my turn now. To go back to the question, rather than explaining what Agile is, I think I would like to go back to see what Agile coaching is. So since we've already defined Agile, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Joshua. I think the coaching part, where the coaching part comes in is, in order to help companies or even individuals to adopt this kind of mindset, to adopt this way of working, I think there are a lot of changes needed. And as an Agile coach, your role is to help guide people, help guide companies. So sometimes we look at a couple of people together and see what we call a system. How do they behave? What are the feedbacks that we see in the system? If you do A, does it always result in B, or does it sometimes result in D, sometimes result in C or D? Dynamics. It's quite complex and complicated, I would say. But going back to its heart, I think it's to help guide people and guide companies through this change, and eventually, hopefully sooner than later, make ourselves unemployed.
Yeah, your response kind of reminds me of a conversation I had once with my manager. So he was the CIO, the place that I was at, and we were trying to figure out what is this whole agile coaching transformation, what does it actually mean to us. And the analogy we came up with was, imagine if you're on a bus. So the whole organization was trying to go agile, right? Imagine you're on a bus, you're driving the bus while spinning plates at the same time, changing the wheels on the bus and making sure all the passengers are happy. Right. So that's basically the complication, the dynamics at play of keeping the business alive, where you're changing how you work and keeping everybody else happy. You know? So that's been pretty consistent with my experience as an agile coach too. Okay. So we touched a little bit on this previously. Right. We talked about kind of what do you do and how do you get into the agile profession. Now, one of the things that is very clear to me is nobody starts their career as an agile coach, right? So from your responses earlier, it seems like there's development, you came from a project management background, but what has happened for us in the past is very different from the current generation, right? Because agile is more popular today. Scrum mastering is a legitimate role, like people hire for a role called Scrum Master that never used to happen. So my question to you then is, how, if you were thinking about entering an agile profession today, right? What would you do? What would you have done differently?
I'll just go ahead and start it off, I guess, guys. I guess I was really lucky in that I got to start off kind of the traditional way. I discovered very early on that I was in a Scrum team, supposedly, and it was the worst experience I'd ever had in my life. I had someone knowledgeable about Scrum explain to me what it was. And from that minute on, I got myself certified. I started going to conferences. I started going to coach camps, even before I was even a Scrum Master. I delved in headfirst because I loved the meaning behind it all. But for most people, that doesn't really happen. I had years and years to kind of grow into this. A lot of people now get pushed into it as, hey, you were a PM, now you're an agile coach, and they don't really know how. So I think for me, a lot of people entering nowadays, they come in from a different path, but the path should still be the same in that once you're known as an agile coach, delve into it, get to know the community, get to know the people in your area, talk to people who have been in the business and have seen what's going on wherever in the world you are. Funnily enough, for me, I've done conferences around the world and I realized there's not a single one of us that has a unique different problem. Business is the same everywhere. And so for me, the key to being an agile coach is networking. It's, you are never, as an agile coach, going to have all the answers. You are never going to have all the experience. I don't care how many industries you work in, but getting to know people from absolutely all over the world and finding out what they've done and really delving into how they felt and how they dealt with things. That's what makes your experience better. And that's what makes you a better coach. And so for me, it's embracing the fact that this is a beautiful thing, and getting to know as many people as you can that are a part of it.
Yeah, that's something I really echo, because that's actually how we all met, right? We all met at the coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely conferences, coaching retreats, I definitely echo with that, because I find that learning from peers through talking about issues, problems is way, way richer than reading a book or going for training, for instance. What about Mikey? You know, so knowing what you know now, if you had to do it all over again, how would you do it?
I see a lot of people these days who actually enter the profession as an agile coach. They just start out saying, "Hey, I'm an agile coach," and they look for their first job as an agile coach. Sometimes those people, I discover those people when they talk to me. Sometimes I just see them out, for example, at meetups. My general advice for everyone is, don't be afraid to be a scrum master. There seems to be this notion of a hierarchy these days, where agile coach is high up, and if you're scrum master, you're much lower being.
Yeah.
First thing I want to say is that is not the case. In order to be a good agile coach, in my opinion, you need to have been a scrum master. Why is that the case? What tends to be the case that I often see is, when you're an agile coach, you more often deal with systems, meaning more than one team. Whereas as a scrum master, it tends to be one or two teams, usually. So in order for you to understand dynamics of more than one team, you need to understand how one team works first. So being a good scrum master definitely helps you to be an agile coach. And if you were to enter the profession today, I would actually say start out being a scrum master. Stay there for a while until you master it. Most of the skills that you need as an agile coach, you'll learn while you're a scrum master, and then take it to the next level, whatever that means for you.
Right. Thanks, Mikey. So Joshua, I noticed that you gave a thumbs up and you're shaking your head. So what was that about?
Yeah, wow. There's a lot of memories when all of you are talking about all these things. It just flashes coming out. And I'm a person who believes a lot of it is through practice. It is through really being thick skin and volunteer and really say I do it, and not even afraid of failing. And I totally agree that you have to start off with really scrum mastering work. That's super important. And in fact, this is what I felt that, at least for me, but as I earlier mentioned, I have to create chances for myself. I wasn't even in the community, but I have to claw into the community by showing that I am passionate and also I can actually deliver. So by doing free stuff for people just to show it, I felt that nowadays people are a lot more lucky. Especially nowadays there are so many chances. There are so many agile teams. So this is precisely what I'm doing with my teams. As my title is a Scrum Master and Agile Coach, because I actually switch between these two. Sometimes I actually go up and be helping transformation when need be. But I always have teams with me. So currently, when I'm actually doing Scrum Mastering with my team, I always try to do co-Scrum Mastering with them. so-called, I use that word, co-scrum mastering. So we take turns to do retrospective. We take turns to facilitate daily scrum. So I think the whole idea is that is to always volunteer, and then this is how you actually slowly get into that path. Yeah, this is at least how I feel. When you actually show that interest, at least I think if you're in an agile organization, you will slowly be given the opportunity to rise up, so-called, to become an agile coach.
Yeah.
I think it's being visible and practice more.
Yeah, I find that given the concept of agile as we know it has only been around for about 20 years, right? A lot of the people who started in this profession never started to be an agile coach or to be an agilist because it wasn't really a thing. And it's really, I echo your point, right? It's really about identifying opportunities and problems to solve, right? And using the agile mindset to solve them. So with that, I want to go on to the next section. So all of you have been practicing agile coaches for a while now. What does your day-to-day look like? And what kind of people do you work with? And what does the day-to-day work with will look like? So I know that you've kind of worked with teams, and I think that's where an agile coach usually spends most of their time is working on teams. But I'm curious, right? Because I think Mikey brought up a concept called transformation. So agile coaches are now increasingly part of a larger program of change. You can call it digital transformation, agile transformation. So the question to you is, other than the teams that you work with, who else do you work with supporting that change or that transformation?
Who's gonna go first?
Yeah.
Hey, go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. Before I answer the question, however, I would like to invite everyone to just turn on your video. It's always a little bit nicer when you see people. And I'm not actually looking at the slides, I'm looking at the view of all of you. There's this thing called grid view or gallery view in Zoom. And right now I just see a lot of names with black backgrounds. So please turn on your video. That would make it much more personal for me. What was the question again?
Let me ask it.
What kind of people do I work with again?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I think for the last 12 months, I have not worked with teams very closely anymore. I mostly work with CTOs these days, and that's probably a privilege that I get through the company I'm working with. It's a company called McKinsey, the consultancy company. And I work with a lot of agile coaches and some scrum masters. That allows me to kind of take a step back, see the bigger picture, but at the same time, also focus much more on that one ceiling that I think if you've been a scrum master for a while, or you've been an agile coach for a while, you usually hit, which is, yeah, but management doesn't support us. Oh yeah, but management doesn't really understand what we're trying to do. So that's one of the reasons why I'm spending a lot of time with CTOs. When it's not a CTO, very rarely it's a CEO, but it tends to be head of whatever department we're working with. And I actually found that has probably the biggest and most profound impact. When a CTO supports you, then most of your problems, they're no longer problems. You could have banged your head against the wall for a month. When the CTO comes in and says, no, we're going to change that, that obstacle is gone in a second. And if you go back to what a scrum master is supposed to do, which is remove impediments, you basically get a big bulldozer that helps you remove every impediment that you don't want to be there.
Yeah. So let me ask a follow-up, Mikey. Then how do you work with those CEOs? How do you convince them, or how do you work with them to remove those impediments?
I'm a big believer in that you cannot coach someone who does not want to be coached. So I don't actually make them believe. What I do is there are a couple of techniques, a couple of tools that I use to help them realize that the current way of thinking is not equipped to deal with today's complexity. The most visible change that we have all seen is COVID. Most companies are not ready for COVID. Most leaders are not ready for COVID. That's why you had this joke on LinkedIn. Who drove your digital transformation? CEO, CTO, or COVID? It's always COVID. And as soon as you make them realize that their current mindset is not fully equipped to deal with the complexities of today's world, that they'll come to you automatically. Does that mean they do everything you ask them to? No. You still have to, it still has to make sense what you tell them, but it's a very good first step.
Cool. Sally, I saw that you were nodding in agreement there.
Oh yeah, it all depends on the company you're with, whether they buy in. Funny story. So like I said earlier, my husband and I are both Agile coaches. He's still keeping his job, and I lost mine 2 weeks into this. I had been working with 5 different teams. Only one had listened. Only one had understood and kind of fought for the new ways of working. I turned them into a Kanban team. And when COVID hit, only one team took less than a day to transition completely to digital working and never lost a step. They were just spot on. Every other team crumbled. So it's a crazy thing. For me, my typical day-to-day, of course, depends on the company you're with. You're either working with teams or you're working with the bigger picture. You're either doing portfolio Kanban or you're working, at the ground level, trying to train people up. But the other portion of my day that you guys might not be familiar with is all the stuff I do outside of it. Anytime I go into a company, I set up some sort of Slack channel or some form of communication so that people, as they're going through this, can ask the coaches questions so that they don't have to feel like they have to be on. A lot of people are introverted and don't want to talk in a big group. I want to make sure that all of those people have a way to chat. I do a lot of lean coffee style meetups during the day. We'll do tea time where everybody grabs a cup of tea and we sit and chat. A lot of the other stuff I do is after hours. I invite people who, you can always find those people who really care and really want to try harder. And I'm consistently trying to find them and getting them to talk about their experiences with Agile at conferences, getting them to join Lean Beers, getting them to help their coworkers. When questions come up, it doesn't just have to be the coach that has the answers. It can be that scrum master who's been there for a while and understands what's happening to help. So for me, my day is always about balancing what do I need to do for the team or teams that I'm working with, but also what can I do, what kind of legacy that I can leave that's going to make them want to do more after I'm gone. Because I'm one of those weird people. I tend to attract the really bad clients, the really, really awful clients, but I always look for those silver linings, the people who are going to go on to be a scrum master, or who are going to want to be a scrum master but also want to take PO training because they realize they have to know what that means. That's kind of where I focus. So for me, it's a never ending sort of day in, day out. I vacation around Agile conferences because I'm a complete Agile fanatic and love this. I find it enriching. I enjoy it. And on those rare occasions when people come to me years later and say, oh my gosh, what you said to me, 3 years ago made a difference in where I am today. That's what I live for. And so for me, it's the ongoing community.
I resonate with that, with the word legacy, right? It's you're right. Like Mikey said it earlier, is how do we work ourselves out of the job, right? And that I that as leaving a legacy. And sometimes it could be small things, sometimes it could be large things, right? And you're right. Like one of the things I do as an Agile coach is I set up people infrastructure, right? Like how do you get people to connect with each other? How do you set up the environment in which they can do their best work? And a lot of that is not working within the team. It's working with policies. It's working with facilities management, working with IT support, and all of that is in service of creating that environment in which people can connect and work together, and then ultimately leave a legacy. So Joshua, I just want to open up a very specific question to you. So you've shared that in your previous life you were a project manager, and I'm assuming that in your current world as Agile coaching, specifically working with traditional companies and even the government, project management is probably a key function in most of these organizations. So how do you operate as an agile coach or working in a project management organization?
Okay, so if let me try. Are you asking about as a PM, how could I function or use the technique of coaching in the day-to-day job as a PM? Is
Yes.
this what you're okay? Um, I don't think I can answer that strictly because I quit project management and go into agile coaching.
Mhm.
But I realized I can never run away from project management. Yeah, I think in many functions, to tell the truth, I think you have to do a lot of project management. Probably I can share a bit what I'm doing now. It might help to answer a bit. Currently, I'm working with the MVP development, and we have to show a lot of value to our internal customer sometimes, and most of the time to the external customer. So we actually do a lot of engagement. And actually from time to time, I also manage the process. I have to manage the process, so I have to assume a bit of the PM role, while even though I'm doing Scrum Mastering when necessary. Then I have to actually even sort of when I'm guiding them into the process, I have to push forward instead of collaboration, contract negotiation. Instead of contract negotiation, I have to push for customer collaboration, and have to shift that mindset. So while we're actually pushing certain things, we actually try to pull people in to collaborate more with us, the customer, and always entice them with value. Okay, every time when we meet, every time when we come, there's something valuable. So then we actually continuously show value as we actually continue to run this project in the form of MVP.
Cool.
So at this point, as I actually look back into your original question, so I've been working a lot with the salespeople now. We've actually bring the team to talk to the customer directly, to pitch them sales as well, to keep on showing value that the agile way of doing things is the way to bring them into this digital transformation. So and I think that actually makes PM work even more interesting. That means you're not just trying to manage the project, but you also try to change their mindset in that sense. Try to actually do things in a more collaborative manner. So if I'm going to share that, if I'm going to marry this, I think the way we work will be different if I'm going to marry agile in project management.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? Because if we look at a lot of scaling frameworks or agile scaling methods, a lot of it is about managing the whole value stream, right? It's no longer just managing IT or a department. It's actually managing the whole value stream around how does we as an organization deliver value to our customers and know that we're delivering that value and get feedback, right? So it's interesting how even the role as a manager is ever evolving. And I think that's one thing I learned about being in the agile space, right? It is an ever evolving career. Like it is always something's always changing. All right, so let's go to the next question. So we're gonna go to the next section of our conversation around kind of what skills are required to be a successful agile coach and develop your career as an agile coach. So we're gonna run this poll on Slido around what skills are required to be an agile coach. So I'd like to take a moment for the audience to go into Slido and give you a chance to key in what you think are the required skills to be an agile coach. All right, so while that's happening, so let's talk about it, right? So my first question to you is, how do you think about skills as an agile coach, right? So rather than saying you need hard skills or soft skills, how do you go about thinking about skills? Because we're trying to coach a lot of this with the teams and people that we're working with, right? So let's continue with Joshua. So Joshua, briefly, when you go and start with a team, what are the first few skills you look at coaching into your teams?
Yeah, wow, okay. To me, okay, it's a very personal view. I personally feel that I'm an engineer by training. I'm a solution provider. So when you step into an agile coaching job, you're told not to teach them what to do. So you're not supposed to tell them what to do, because you're supposed to make them self-organized. So I think that is the most difficult part for me. So for an engineer to come over to be an agile coach, then he must learn what is actually professional coaching. So I'm spending a lot of time trying to sharpening my skill set in the professional coaching. And the more I exercise professional coaching, I realize this is really the number one skill set at least for myself, I think I need to acquire. Yeah. And that actually helps me to, I even tell people that it's a breakthrough for myself. Yeah. Coaching skill set to me is the most important thing at this point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I'm looking at the word cloud right now, and active listening, empathy, and system thinking is going through really, really clearly. So, Mikey or Sally, do you have a comment on what's coming through on the word cloud?
Yeah, so the first thing I needed to learn and the thing that I still struggle with is shutting up. Agile coaching is not about us, the Agile coach. Agile coaching is about seriously hearing what their issues are. So often their issues aren't the issues that they think they are, and it's up to us not to find them a solution and make them happy. It's to get at the heart of what's going on, and it's to get them communicating. And so for me, yeah, the biggest challenge and the biggest thing that I know coaches, especially new ones, don't do is we don't step back. We tend to get into coaching in the field that we're in. For me, it was the web world, and I was very experienced in it, and I wanted to give a solution to everything. Being able to step back and letting them dictate how things go is probably the most important thing I've seen. But the second most important is that as an Agile coach, you don't ever get great, ever. You learn and you keep going and you keep learning and you keep going and you keep hitting challenges you don't know how to deal with. And if you ever let go of that and think you've made it, you haven't. Step back. Listen to who you're talking to, listen to who you're working with, delve into how they're feeling. I've learned more from the people I've coached than I think I've taught them. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Thank you. So I want to open this up to Mikey. So based on the work that you've seen, and with this question, right, what tips and advice can you give someone who wants to develop a career? How would you advise them, Mikey?
I think I've already answered part of this. I'm assuming with career, you mean Agile coach career?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, what advice can you give somebody, either an aspiring Agile coach or a practicing Agile coach, to be able to work with the C-suite?
Oh, that's a different question. Okay. To be able to work with executive people, learn the language, forget your own language. That is probably one thing. As soon as you start talking about story points and try to explain what a story point is, you've lost them. Learn the way they think. So find out what keeps him or her awake at night. What are the issues that they're dealing with? And work with those first, because he or she, they have an inherent interest in solving those issues. If you can tie up your agenda as an Agile coach, where you're trying to help the teams together with their agenda, then it's much easier. You don't have to convince people anymore, because you're just not taking advantage, that's the wrong word. You're just finding synergies. Oh, that's a good consultant word. Yes, you're just finding synergies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I echo what you said, right? One of the things that really helped me work with execs is to learn their language. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I had to take an MBA for that. There's so many other ways of learning, but it really helps to speak the same language.
If you have too much money in your bank account, please do an MBA. I think it's quite useful. It's also very useful for the network that you build.
Yes.
But if you do not have too much money in your bank account, just talking to them is a good start.
Execs are people too,
Yeah.
So I want to open this question to Sally. So you've mentioned before that you work with multiple teams at the same time. So how would you advise someone who's working on say one or two teams to be able to work with 6 teams, 8 teams, for instance?
Unfortunately, the big thing that comes into play when you're working with multiple teams is compromise. You've got to be really skilled at understanding what those teams need and understanding where you can let go. I've I had an interesting example of one place where they were kind of forcing me at one point to work with 6 teams at a time, who unfortunately had to be in lockstep cadence doing the same schedule. So it was a constant daily struggle to figure out who needed me most. And the second I thought a team was inching up in their ability to deal, something would hit hard and they would falter. I think the main thing to deal with when working with multiple teams is really build trust among the teams, really help someone on that team, especially if you're the scrum master or the agile coach and there's not really someone strong in agile skills. Find that one person who's interested and get them to be your backup, get them to be your eyes and ears when you have to have your back turned on that team. It's always possible, but if the lines of communication aren't open, they're going to fall down. They're just going to. And same with the C-suite level. The C-suite level is even worse because they're not going to give you enough time. You have to build that little level of trust so that someone's watching them when you're not.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trick question because there's no way one person can manage 6 teams. But it is
no, but you will get forced to.
right.
And how to sleep at night while doing it.
Yes, and I think this is an emerging problem because with the last few years of digital transformation, and I think even with COVID, the demand for agility and agile coaches is only going to rise, and there's not enough agile coaches right now. So we're definitely making successful for handling multiple teams, really more than we're able to. And I think that's where echoing Mikey is: are we able to work with managers, decision makers, to be able to contextualize and clearly articulate what the issues are, right? So that we can knock them out one by one. So I want to go to Joshua here. So Joshua, you mentioned that you work with non-IT teams like sales and marketing. So how did you equip yourselves to work with non-IT teams and non-IT people when we're coaching them how to work in an agile way?
I think Mikey said very, very well, really talking about, you must talk about to them in their same language. I think it's very important. Really know them. And I think it's very important to exhibit empathy. Yeah, and it's very important to shows that you care and you really want to partner them and work together to be successful together. And to the certain extent is that I try to, because sales, they also wanted to know how can they sell the things better. So how can I even pull both sales and business, and also I think it's the developers together. We even do ideation together with the business people sometimes. So I think this is how we can work with a lot more synergy. Sometimes I even invite them to actually review the decks and then let them understand where we're coming from, So I have to be very intentional and purposeful, and of course trying to sell both sides that there's a value to work together.
Yeah. I definitely remember the time where I had to read like a marketing book or sales book just to understand their world a lot more.
Yeah.
And I find that as I'm coaching, even having skills like facilitation or even being able to understand design thinking is really helpful.
Z, absolutely. Because the one thing that all of this comes back to with being an agile coach is it's all about the basics. It doesn't matter if you're talking C-suite or, an intern that's coming into the company. It's knowing how to get them talking.
Yes.
It's knowing how to get them feeling safe. It's knowing how to get them to answer the questions they don't want to answer. And that's where those coaching skills come in. We've got to help them talk.
Yes.
Somehow I feel that the Agile manifesto, the Agile values are so powerful. You
Yes.
just that, you can bind people together because this is really the things that everybody values in a company. So I use that. Recently, I used the Agile Manifesto, just talk about customer collaboration versus contract negotiation with the customer. And then I actually say, oh, these are approaches based on these values. And then, voila, we start talking. It's really fantastic, yeah.
Cool. So I know we've already touched on this a little bit. So Mike shared his perspective. Is there anything else to add on to this? Otherwise, we will start going to the Q&A session after one more question. Okay, we'll skip this. We're out of time. I got two more. So maybe I'm going to open this up really quickly. Okay. So one thing that you really like doing as an Agile coach, one thing you don't like doing as an Agile coach.
I'm gonna go first because it's the same thing. One thing I love about doing as an Agile coach is working with people, seeing the change, seeing them grow, seeing them have this light bulb aha moment. I love that. And for me, that's the rewarding part. One thing I dislike about doing as an Agile coach is working with people. Because, so I'm of the opinion that technical problems, IT problems in particular, but not just IT problems, they don't really exist.
Nope.
It's always people problems, always. And sometimes you get people at their best, but that's quite rare. More often you get them at the average, or you get them a little bit below average, I would say. So I dislike working with people because sometimes when someone is upset about something and they just give you a really harsh response, or they say no, and it happens.
Yeah, it's like someone once told me this. It's like, what's the great thing about working with people? Humans as opposed to machines. It's like humans are creative. What's the worst thing about working with humans? Is humans are creative. Very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right. What about you, Sally or Joshua?
So yeah, for me, it's kind of that same thing. It's that balance between, I love working with people. I think I had a little more fun with Agile years ago when it was new and nobody knew anything. I find it to be more difficult now because people have been inundated with bad Agile and faux Agile and big corporate Agile. And it's really hard for me to get them to understand that you're hiring me as an expert in a field and yet you're dismissing me and telling me how to do my job. So a lot of times it's very frustrating, but I think I touched on this earlier. I always, no matter how bad it is, I go back to who can I make a difference with? And even if that's one person, I'm happy because I know that that's one person who's going to go on to a new job and pull this stuff in, and eventually this is going to steamroll 20 years later. It's going to eventually steamroll into something that's going to be the norm, so that when my kids go into the business world after high school, they're not going to have to deal with waterfall transitioning into Agile, something else transitioning into. They're just going to understand that this is the way that things should be, and that they should be constantly striving to make it even better than that.
Cool. And Joshua, would you like to wrap up this question?
Okay. It is a very personal question, so I answer in a more personal way. I think one good thing about Agile coaching is it challenges me. I realize I'm quite a lazy person. I need to be very goal-focused, solving problem. Something that actually that really gives me a certain challenge. Then I will start to wake up. Okay, I want to solve this. I want to resolve this. And I realize every work, Agile coaching is very challenging. I personally feel, and you have to actually apply the rule of less is more. Not doing more is actually this. Doing less actually you can produce a lot more effort. Is challenging to me. So I quite enjoy the kind of challenge. And people is super challenging. Yeah, sometimes I even feel that it's more challenging than technical work. So maybe that's why I quite enjoy this. So that's one thing I realize I like. And but I felt that being an agile coach, there's a problem. That is because agile has its roots. It came from the IT. So as I continue to excel myself in this path, I start to move away from my engineering practice. So that is the tendency. Of course, might not happen to everybody, but it happens to me. So I personally feel that sometimes I might felt that am I actually losing touch? Yeah. So there's actually a kind of struggle. There's some things that I felt that maybe I'm not being actually. I've been even asking myself, am I getting relevant? So I'm always trying very hard to struggle and get that balance. So this is something very personal. Yeah.
Right, thank you. So it's 7:54. So I'll skip this one and let's go into the Q&A. All right, so the one with the top votes, how do you deal with leadership team management who thinks they're doing Agile?
Hey, I'm having some bandwidth problems. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
All right, so I'll repeat. The top voted question is, how do you deal with leadership team or management who thinks they're doing that?
Yeah, anybody? Yeah, this is one of the toughest. It's something that I've run across so many times. I meet people, I go in, I do my own agile assessment to kind of see where I feel that they are, and it's usually in the 0 to 10 scale. They're in the negative numbers. But they think they're in the 12, 13, 14, 15, 20 range. It all comes back to the conversation. It all comes back to, I try not to judge. I try not to, I have to very difficultly try not to belittle them, and just get to the heart of what is it they expect? What is it they want? What is it they're trying to accomplish? And really just circle it all back to, why are we here? Why are we even talking about this? And when you can finally get back and convince them to be open and honest about why they're there, you can finally start breaking through. But I can't think of a person that I've worked with in the last 10 years that hasn't over exaggerated their absolute skill. One of my favorite stories is, I know several of the top trainers of POs and agile coaches and scrum masters in Australia, and they find people who get into their classes and are like, I've been a scrum master for 6 years and I'm just taking this class because my boss paid for it. And then they suddenly go, oh my God, I had no idea this is what scrum was and what I was supposed to be doing. It's that common thing. So it's kind of our job not to judge, not to stop them in their tracks, but to meet them where they are and bring them further. Let them know that where they are is great. Rock on, you've been trying. Let's go forward.
Yeah, I really like the part where it's meet them where they are. A potential friend asked me this question around, are we ready to be agile? Followed with,
Most
are we
answers
agile?
no.
And it's like, start from where you are, and the journey never ends, right? It's not about being agile, it's about how well you're doing in the marketplace or against your competitors.
That's the key, is it never ends. And as long as we can portray that it's a never ending journey to just keep getting better, it helps them. Then they don't feel that pressure that I have to tick a box to get here.
Exactly.
It's just, hey, just get better.
All right.
Tomorrow we get better.
I'm gonna go on to the next question, so mark that done. Next one is, any tips for implementing Agile into operational teams? So this sounds like probably a great example of maybe a Kanban team.
Exactly. From my experience, there are two ways to go about it. It's either create them as a Kanban team and teach them how to create working agreements that work with the other teams. In fact, I just had some serious success with a data analyst team that could not be part of the Scrum teams. They had to be separate for a variety of reasons. but they were able to become a very successful Kanban team that had working agreements across all of their groups. Everyone understood where they were in the hierarchy of what was happening next. It always comes down to the same thing: open, honest communication, figure out what your limitations are, meet them as best you can, and every couple of weeks try to figure out if you can get better at it. Ideally, your ops teams should be part of your dev teams when you can get there, when the company allows it. Oh, it's brilliant when it works. When DevOps is seriously just a part of a team, it's fantastic. But there are ways, especially with Kanban, to work around it when teams aren't there, when companies aren't willing to let the collaboration happen and have operations be part of the teams. But everything is doable if you ask the right questions and if people talk.
Yeah, one thing I found really interesting is for ops teams or support team, ITIL, the latest version of ITIL has incorporated a lot of agile methods into their curriculum. And I think the latest,
Really?
yes, in the latest version.
Sorry, I haven't done ITIL in 20 years, but
Agile, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So if you're working with support teams, operational teams, definitely take a look at the latest version of ITIL and Kanban. So that's probably a good place to start. And to echo what Sally said earlier, start from where you are, and that's where Kanban.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to open the next question to Mikey, Nadia, you're back, and Joshua. How can you tell that Agile is the right career for you? You're muted, Mikey. All right, with Sally or Joshua, would you like to take this one?
Okay. I think, how would I know? I think if you like to engage people, definitely. And you felt that if helping people to be successful, and to a point that you're not at the center of that limelight, but you're willing to play that role that supports and help people to be successful, I think it is for you. I never see Agile coach as the person in front. I always see Agile coach as the person at the side. And if people are successful, I'm successful. I think if you have that mindset, this to me, I think probably this is for you.
Yeah, I think it's related to that second question is what in this career excites you? Like it has to be exciting. You have to love doing this kind of stuff because there are really some bad days when you're working with people.
There are bad years, Z. There are bad years. But no, again, it's all about understanding what agility brings to the table, and it's that lack of risk, that transparency, that treating your customers as the person you're working for, not profits. It's about your customers. It's about treating your employees like people and not resources. And when all of that stuff works together, for lack of a better way to put it, it's kind of magical. It's kind of amazing. For me, again, I go back to the people. I've watched people over the years go from, I don't give two shits about my job, to, oh my gosh, I want to know how to do a talk at an Agile conference because this made a difference in my life, not just my job. You know, my well-being was taking into consideration. And so for me, it's all about engaging those people and getting them engaged.
Cool. So I'm gonna work.
Hey, can you hear me again?
Yes, Mikey, welcome
Yes.
back. Okay.
Back.
Yay! Finally, now it's working.
So I just want to.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question.
So I want to acknowledge it's 8:03. It's a little past 8. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one more question and we'll wrap it up. And then whoever wants to stay on, we'll open up this call. The panelists will be here till 8:30. We can take more of these questions, or we can even just have a chit chat with each other, grab a drink, and hang out. Okay, so we'll take this question. What are some things that you've tried out? What worked, what didn't work, and for the one that didn't, what do you replace it with? So I wanna add color to this question because I think ultimately it's actually about how do we address experimentation and failure and the eventual failures that may come with it, right? Because experiments is about also failing. So how how do you and how would you deal with the scenarios of when you tried something out and it didn't work out?
What
Could
you
you
got,
repeat it
guys?
again? Sorry.
Okay,
When you failed.
Oh.
what happens when you fail? When you try something out, it didn't work.
Oh,
How
I
do you
failed so many
deal?
times. Um, okay. Where can where I failed most, especially probably the first 10 years, and I was not able to find a good replacement, was actually how do I deal with those, I'm sorry, this is going to sound very controversial, how do I deal with those pesky middle managers and those CTOs who really don't get it, even though they say, yeah, we got to go agile, but they don't really understand what it means. And I tried many different things, and most of them failed. Not most of them, all of them failed. Even now, I think I shared that I work a lot with them these days, but even now, I probably still, I would say my failure rate is around 50%. Half of them I get through to in one way or the other, and half of them it's just, nah, sorry, you're not gonna get it. You're just here because it's a paycheck, maybe, because it pays the bills, especially these days in COVID, that's important, I just have to add. But you don't have any intrinsic motivation to make this whole work. So when I failed, oftentimes, eventually I just gave up. I just tried to optimize for my team, do the best that I can, given the resources that I have. But these days, what I try to replace it with is a really good coaching tool that I've been using, which is called the Leadership Circle Profile. So if you don't know it, just take a look at it, and maybe you can use it for yourself.
Right,
it helps coach senior leadership and CEOs. It helps show it helps you to give them a mirror that they can look into to actually see, actually, I'm crap. I thought I was good, but I'm actually crap. And part of it is a 360.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. on that note, we're gonna wrap up before we go into kind of our virtual happy hour. So thank you for joining. So thank you to Michael, Sally, and Joshua for joining. Thank you to the audience for joining our conversation today. So just to let you know, our next event is on June 24th. We're going to be doing a coaching clinic where I'll invite as many coaches as I can, and we can basically start taking your problems, your challenges, to really see how we can address them. Right, so go to agilemalaysia.my or join the Facebook group or PTX to stay in touch with the events that we have. Is there anything from Michael, Sally, or Joshua that you'd like to plug before we end the night? Yes, Michael.
Yes. For me, I'm gonna unscrupulously plug my event as well. So I will be running an empathy circle next week for Agile Singapore and Agile Hong Kong. It's going to be a collaborative event. If you don't know what empathy circle is, it's basically a way to connect with each other online. And for me, it's a way to feel less lonely, which is why I'm running it.
Yeah, and it's a really great way of developing that skill called empathy and active listening.
And listening.
Yes. Cool. Thank you all. So with that, I bid you, this is the end of the session. So please stay safe, stay healthy. But if you can stay on a bit longer, so I'm going to kind of close the meetup tonight. And if this was a real meetup, we will basically be having drinks and talking right now. So if you want to hang out, we can take more questions. You can grab a drink, and we'll keep this call open until 8:30. But if you want to go off, I bid you a good night. Thank you for coming.